Welcome back, everybody. Senior project number 5, right? As you can see, there's plenty of, there's going to be some hands-on opportunities today.
Yes.
Okay. So I encourage you to make sure that you are fully attentive to our speaker, and when it's time to use the supplies in front of you, Ash will give you directions. Try to stay focused on what Ash is sharing with you, even though all of those lumps of dough are super tempting ahead of time. It's an honor to introduce Ash. They started at Valley New School as a 9th grader and weren't too happy to be at Valley New School when they started as a 9th grader. How many of you had parents who made the decision about where to go to school for you? Yeah. The great thing about Ash is one of the many great things about Ash, though, is that even though she wasn't excited to be here in that moment, every moment was used to grow. So that project that Ash mentioned in the hot seat yesterday, we choked up the archery project. And Ash was like, why did I do that project? I didn't even like archery. She spent the time figuring out the project process and learning it. And then from there said, oh, I love art, and I'm going to learn how to do a whole bunch of art things and how to incorporate the project process and how to grow. So I hope you enjoy the senior project that is the culmination of all that hard work. Ash Neerdaels.
Before I begin, one person from each table, if one of you would like to knead the dough just right now as I start, because it might get a little bit dry.
That needs water.
It's like a double Oh my god, like a real Italian. Oh my goodness.
I'm a baker. Like, I work at a bakery.
You gotta have accentuation. You gotta be accentuated. Ew. Why is Isaac pulling the ghetto cut?
What?
That's on 9.
No, where was I going? I want to put a
Yeah.
I can hear your name.
Your mom shows up like every
Now we can begin.
Why would you want to? That sounded too serious. We should buy.
Everyone here enjoys video games, right? I also enjoy video games, both playing them and understanding how they are made. At the beginning of the school year, when it came to choosing my senior project, I knew it would revolve around video games, whether that would be making my own video game, designing characters for or inspired by a video game, or focusing on one of the many roles of a game developer. In order to help narrow down my options and find exactly what it was I wanted to do, I contacted Bob Graff, an ex-animator for Pixar Studios, and John Robertson, head of admissions at Think Tank Training Center in Toronto, Canada. They recommended I practiced Unreal Engine or Blender, which guided my project to what it is today. So after that, I decided to jump right into note-taking and research. My preliminary research was inspired by the workflow that Think Tank offers their students. In year 1, they study each role within video game development, and in year 2, they choose the role they want to specialize in. That led me to research all of the video game development roles and then focus my main research on engineering and art. I created my own binder and made dividers for these roles and their subtopics. I found this form of note-taking much easier to memorize and organize. My note subtopics included understanding and navigating Unreal Engine, topology, modeling objects, props, environments, lighting, rendering, texturing, UV mapping, current trends of video games, design for film versus games, and Unreal Engine Update 5.5, which was a topic I ended up adding in the middle of my research phase because a new version of Unreal Engine was released. All of this information would inform my non-written product, which I will tell you guys more about that in a few minutes. I also researched the pros and cons of generative artificial intelligence. As it is definitely affecting the video game industry, this information went into my research paper. During this phase, I followed Unreal Engine tutorials at home, learning how to set up a base scene, move objects, change settings, make materials, and make a minigame, which was a simple obstacle course. Theo, could you click it? Thank you. And I gave it ragdoll effects for fun.
Yeah.
Paint foliage, sculpt a landscape, and eventually make my own environment design. However, I only managed to make it as far as sculpting the landscape because the tutorial I was using ended up getting deleted right in the middle of this process, and at the time, I didn't have any time to spare as I had already put about 20 hours into that part of my process. Once I finished the tutorials and Unreal Engine notes, I met with my third live source, artist and animator Carson Kugler, from whom I got some helpful insight on how to stay on top of industry trends and how to make creative design choices. My biggest takeaway from my meeting with him was how important it is to be willing to adapt to whatever technological changes there are in the industry. He also referred me to some additional live sources. However, I unfortunately did not get a response from either of them, even after reaching out twice. Next, I began my research on topology. But I didn't get very far with this, because I began to realize how large of a topic that is, and it could really be an entire senior project on its own. Since my core focus of this project was not to learn topology, but to learn about the fundamentals and processes involved in video game design and development, and showcase my research with a 3D design in Unreal Engine, I decided to move on with my notes, and I started my research on the industry trends for video games. I figured it could be inspirational or give me some good ideas for my product later on. The next topics I focused on were the pros and cons of artificial intelligence in design and concept design in films versus games. As my research continued, I balanced my time between these two topics. Let's start with AI. As most of you have learned this year, AI is everywhere now. In the design fields, artists have been struggling with the ethical use of AI, specifically generative AI used in the creative process. While some people argue it is a valuable resource for referencing, speeding up their design processes, or idea generation, many artists see this differently. In order to train a generative AI model, it is fed various pieces of information, like images or videos. The issue is that many of the images and videos used to train generative AI models are artworks, pieces of literature, or films copyrighted and used without the creator's consent. Some companies have begun to let go of some of their artists, opting to use generative AI instead because it is quicker and more efficient to do some prompting to a generative AI and get what they want within seconds. According to a survey by Resume Builder of 1,000 US business leaders, 49% of their companies have already adopted the use of generative AI, and 48% say that AI tools have replaced workers. And these numbers are only expected to continue and grow over the next decade. Additionally, AI models pose many threats to our environment. AI models require huge data centers in order to run their algorithms. Water cooling systems are used to keep them from overheating, which uses up a lot of water. Just one prompt with ChatGPT uses up 1 bottle of water. But water isn't the only thing that is used to help power the data centers. They also use lots of electricity, and a vast majority of that electricity comes from burning fossil fuels, which releases the greenhouse emissions that cause climate change. The energy needed to train one AI model produces nearly 5 times the amount of carbon emissions that a single car makes in its lifetime. Humans have already released 2 trillion metric tons of gases since the first industrial revolution in the mid-1950s. This is more carbon than nature can reabsorb. And every year, humanity pumps out more than 50 billion metric pounds of additional greenhouse gases. It can take thousands of years for these excess gases to dissipate. So humanity would have to remove as much carbon as it emits each year in order to ever reach net zero emissions. In addition to the ethical uses of generative AI in the design field, I took some time to look at the differences between concept design in films and video games. Although film wasn't my prime focus for this project, I do plan to go into some sort of 3D design, CGI, or visual effects for both film and games in the future. So this was important for me to learn about. One of the key things about film is story. Every discipline in the filmmaking process is there to enhance the story the characters are experiencing. For video games, the same can be true for heavily narrative-driven games. But for most action, adventure, first-person shooters, you instead need to put yourself in the player's shoes and design everything in order to enhance the fun the players experience and immerse them into the world. When it comes to designing characters for third-person games, you may want to spend a lot of time designing their back to look really interesting, because it is likely the player would spend a lot of time staring at the back. One thing I never considered when it came to designing spaces is how in films, if there is a long hallway to walk through, you don't want 10 seconds of screen time walking down that hallway. Instead, they'll include some cuts. In video games, there are no cuts, and the player will have to walk down that hallway. So you need to think about how you, as the concept artist, can design a space in a way that the player does not get bored or annoyed. You could do this by adding a few interesting things in the hallway to break the monotony. Games are more often limited in scale, whereas films are easy to paint huge structures. So if you were asked to paint an environment, you'll want to get an idea of how large that environment is. It may also be good to keep in mind that if you are designing a large environment, you'll want to design some sort of vehicle or mobility for the player to get around. If your environment is smaller, you don't want the player to explore the map too quickly. Many games have a goal to achieve that involves going from point A to point B without a guide, and they use structures, terrain, and lighting to lead your eyes and direction. Additionally, many games place objects for the players to hide behind to avoid being seen or attacked. Now that I have shared a bit of my research with you guys, I think it is important to take a closer look at what goes into designing an environment for a video game. The most important phase in the environment design process is concept design and layouts. Your concept design should include all of your ideas prior to the modeling process. A few things your concept design should include are experimentations with lighting, colors, and perspectives, so you can develop the atmosphere and your desired style of environment. Some other important things to consider in your design are the textures, colors, and types of materials. Ask yourself questions like, what kind of visual impact do you want to have on your audience? Or what feeling do you want your audience to feel? If I were the player walking through the environment, what would I expect or want to see? What's the gameplay of the game I am designing this environment for? Before I show you guys my final non-written product that resulted from all this research, I'd like you to have the opportunity to try out this process yourselves. So let's practice with an activity. The first step is generating your idea. So we're gonna do that together. Professional designers don't normally do it this way, but I thought this would be a fun way to teach you guys. So we're gonna do 3 different spinner wheels, one for genres, settings, and times. So I'm gonna have some people call out, raise your hands or something, I'll pick you. Genres could be anything like thriller, a mystery, or action or adventure game, or first-person shooter games. Setting could be a country or an alternate universe. You could say Minecraft if you wanted, I don't care. And for time, that could be 1700s, 1900s, literally any time zone or era, prehistoric era. Aiden? Driving even closer, maybe. Thank you. So we're starting with time zones, it sounds like. So does anyone else have any ideas? B? Cooper?
1950s. No, yeah.
Isaac?
The Black Flag era.
That's 1300s.
Potato, potato. Close enough.
Tegan? Milo? Avery?
2020.
Anyone else? Oh, Cameron?
The year 100.
The year 100.
Yep.
Okay.
100.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else? Oh, Nico?
Ancient Egypt.
That's so
Cooper?
2.
Okay. Cameron?
500 BC.
Are we going further and further?
We're going further back. To the first
Okay, is that
BC.
all?
I can't.
Avery?
Dinosaurs.
Okay.
What? There's 3 periods. Cretaceous.
I forgot what it's called.
We're going. So that's actually further.
Mesopotamia.
B again.
Makes sense. Yeah, I know. I into Mesopotamia.
Spell that? I was gonna say that. We gotta move on to other
Okay.
wheels. I think we have enough.
I think that's good. So we're gonna spin it, and we're gonna write it on the board over there, so that way you know.
2. Come on, 2. Come on, 2. Come on, 2. Yes, yes. Yes, yes. No!
No! We were so close. We were so close to 2.
They can't keep me away with it.
I know ball. I'm like LeBron.
It's on you now.
Okay, we're gonna move on to settings.
My backyard.
That's in that was one. That
I've
could
seen
be
his
a
backyard.
backyard of a house.
All right.
What did you say? Cooper?
The truncheon. Truncheons. All the time.
Annabeth's in outer space.
Crazy, the 1980s.
Cameron.
Detroit.
Okay.
DC metropolitan area, present day.
Isaac.
The Void.
That's
I
basically
was going to say the void.
Minecraft.
No, it's different.
Minecraft.
Invincible.
Veronica.
Do it.
Milo.
That works.
Abby. I'm gonna do two more people and then this one. Aiden. What's that called?
I was going to say the Pentagon.
Stretches.
I don't have anything on.
Oh, please be worth it.
No!
1980s Wednesday? Oh, this would be fun.
Yes.
I'm going to make Cooper's face.
So how this would work with the 1980s and a setting in the Ren Fair, the setting would look like the Ren Fair. It's not the actual time zone. That's why I'm having everyone bring their Chromebooks so you can look that up if you need. And then genre wheel. Anyone have ideas for genres? Cooper.
The war.
The war.
The genre is the war.
Okay. So genres would be like action, adventure, etc.
But yeah,
Invincible. Invincible is a
Invincible is not a genre.
One, which is Miss R. So you better watch what you say.
Julian, were you raising Robin?
That works.
It's a war counter, you would count the economy.
If we get a 1980s Ren Fair zombie alarm.
Not a war. Isn't like the 1980s.
Avery?
The guy who made The Walking Dead also made Invincible.
Nico? That's not a genre. We're not gonna do that for a genre.
This war sure is cold.
What do you say?
Oh my god. I got ball
I
knowledge.
suppose.
What's happening?
Yes.
I don't know. I'm talking.
I thought you said you were gonna say
Annabeth.
Canada.
Dang.
Canada's a
Kidding.
Phoebe?
Use your lip.
Okay, I'm gonna do one more person. We have a long time.
I'm beating my dog.
Spin that wheel.
Spin that wheel.
You do the war. No! It can't be away.
Dude, this is the third time.
I should have said Charlie Kirk rally. It would have been so good. Charlie Kirk at a Ren Fair in 1980.
I wanted China.
Okay.
Alright, now that we have an idea finalized, we can move on to the next step. Each of your benches has supplies, some salt dough, popsicle sticks, some glue, and I think there's some masking tape on some tables. And I did leave a checklist to help you throughout the design process. Since my project is 3D design focused, your job is to design 8 or more props to design a scene. Think about fauna, flora, buildings, geographic features, and or a character, or creatures as well. You have 15 minutes to design a scene using these materials, and at the end of the activity, I ask that one person from each group shares out what you designed with everyone, or multiple people can share it out if you want, whichever you decide. You are welcome to use your Chromebooks to look for references or ideas. Are there any questions? No questions? Okay, we're going to start the timer.
Of course.
You may begin.
Right there in the 1980s. That is a wrong call.
I like the creature. My favorite the Renaissance fair. It's where white people dress up like knights.
Have you ever heard of Flying Cow?
I guess I'll make those
They probably have nothing.
This is quite the story. If it's a rom-com, there's a largely
What's that?
March 2.
I'm fine. Oh, Kevin, that's so structured.
San Francisco Bridge incident.
That's scary.
San Francisco.
At the right there. In the 80s.
Burn San Francisco down.
That's not, okay.
You know what? I got this.
I don't know how it's a red fair,
Okay, guys, I got it.
but so your first thought is cat, you need cat.
It's like,
Yes.
okay, now this is 1980s.
And you, oh, it's 1980.
Make a gay guy. Make you.
Did Hocus Pocus come out before the 1980s?
Okay.
It's like 80s though.
2 gay knights. And this is their house.
We have to read.
They're unemployed like me.
Okay.
Oh, God.
They're gay. They're making the house not straight. The structural integrity is failing.
I think that's work.
No.
What is that? What is that? Is that like a
So
speaking
we're
like
gonna.
I love that our school simultaneously has that and then whatever the.
that's okay. I believe you guys.
I know you were trying.
Thanks, bud.
It wasn't the greatest, but you were trying your best.
What makes this 1980?
Your mom.
What makes it 1980?
Okay. So basically,
Okay.
horse. You can make a horse, right?
Let's kill the horse.
Ben,
Let's
kill the horse.
Yes, I'll make a horse. I got this.
What if the horse and the man calls? I know we're kidding. I'm just kidding. What did you
I still don't know how this fits into like How does it happen?
Yeah.
This script does not have
Moon Yowie. Now then. I'm the one who said that.
slimming down the horse because it's still the same thing.
Bring him a horse skinny. Wow.
Yes, I No, we just need more.
Yeah, this doesn't seem very nice.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know
got your
what I'm more
horse.
concerned about. The fact
I got your horse, guys.
that everyone agrees with it.
I got a horse, guys.
Oh no, the tent is falling.
Do not understand my team genius until it has come to fruition.
What does it have to do with Ryan?
Oh my lord! No, I have no mouth yet, I must scream. That's called a whore! In the 1980s. Make me an engineer.
Look.
Wait, we operate heavy machinery.
It's Squidward.
Why is he so huge?
Because he's SpongeBob.
The horse is a paraplegic. Don't buy it.
Do not squidward that thing over.
Don't make him a horse.
No. That seems like World War II.
Freaking run it. Do you want pain? Do you want pain? Okay.
Yes, my favorite thing from the 1980s.
What is that?
It's BuzzFeed. We give it to SpongeBob.
What's its name?
No, it doesn't need a mouth.
My horse has killed itself. All right.
Dude, I don't even think it's a lot to begin with. It's a stretch going out of place.
Do a Swiss cheese. All right, I'll make the leg. What is this?
The 1980s.
Yeah?
Well, we almost got two.
Even more structural integrity. I've always been one for structure and integrity.
The warranty.
Aren't you glad you guys are graduating? Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh. We are giving it a big, veiny neck. Yeah, give it 10. Give him a 12-inch
I'm working on my own. And also, it's
Give him a 10.
Are they co-parents? Are they co-parents?
What's 1980? Michael Jackson. We need this to happen.
Wait,
I miss Lucky.
Can I have my horse back?
You made a horse.
At the run fair.
I need my horse back.
What are you going to
Roller skates.
I think when you're not wrong, street people don't have to run fairs.
I'm making a horse right now. We already had 1980 Horse.
Yes.
Horse the boy.
What gave you that impression that I wasn't?
News to me.
Horse the boy. Right here.
All right. I'm gonna make a big evil golem. All right. It's like, I cannot hear you. All right, you know what? That's fine.
What is it? We need to,
We need a boombox right here.
Asshole.
No, you think we have enough room for that? Simplicity.
Madonna.
Right, Theo? Simplicity
It was
makes
not on
perfect.
purpose.
Yes.
Not on purpose. I don't know how they
I
you
made
guys
some
like
big
in
evil.
is that the romance?
that was great.
No, so see, here's the deal. So these, all four of these, got traveled back in time from like from the future. They traveled back and got sucked back into
No,
I love that you're adding. I love that you're
where they now get to sit and watch this cat, this magic
He's gonna be hitting a geek bar.
circus cat. That's it. Ooh, ooh.
oh, that is technically 1980. No, that isn't. That's 2000. 2, 0,
Look, my creation.
1.
Okay, so what's the story here? What's the storyline? Curtis and Sal.
Okay, you need to go to an epic class.
They will know they meet each other.
The mayor.
They
Perfect. Perfect, you say.
it's in the 1980s. Curtis is pretending.
Okay.
No. That's not the same thing. But when
So he's just IRL 10.
great.
That's
So
a
they exist in the 1980s.
Make them railing shot.
Yeah, they definitely did. Don't think about that too hard. What? What is that? No, I missed something. Honestly, good work. I honestly.
I'm making him a tripod. So wait, this is his horse. We want knighting this horse. That is a knight. He has a bit of a dad bod, but
Okay.
love him. Gotta give him a dad bod.
Oh, my.
Beats in the body.
Aaron.
I'm angry.
It's realistic.
There's a horse, there's a horse, and he's also a
He loves the horse more than he loves his wife.
Patrick's like home after he realized making up with the yeah, that's why it's a rom-com. Oh my feelings are wrong.
Those guys are right? Everybody was taking on her.
He has a sword.
Future site does a legally different world compared that is compared to this.
Here you guys have the sword.
Yep.
I made a
Not
heart
the
with
same.
the
Yeah,
stick.
legally not the same.
All right, horse, what do we think? Hi, Elliot.
Whoa, what is that? What is
Maybe the rom-com one.
Never mind.
Okay, and it's
Oh, they got sticks. They got sticks. Oh, swords. Oh, yeah.
yeah, he's got knights. We already have a sword and
Wait, what's the hockey aspect?
we don't need chicken candy. We're already full. Already reserved.
So
I'm making Kojo. Only half of him.
30 seconds.
I can imagine being a theater.
He doesn't know he's gay until he realizes that Chris is a man. And then
Kojo, no!
What did you guys have over here?
Satsuki Kojo has fallen. No!
Oh no.
Time is up, guys. Please set your things down.
Hands off, hands off. Time is up. Time is up.
Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah. So I don't have to spread these messages.
Yeah, I'll feel my own garbage. Yay.
Okay, and I will no longer be having you guys share out because we're running low on time. So I'm going to continue with my presentation. I would ask that you guys please set everything down and pay attention.
Okay, we have to move on, everybody.
Now that you guys have tried designing an environment for yourselves, I would like to show you a bit of what I made. My environment would of course be created digitally rather than with Salto. After all, the research I had done, I knew that it would streamline my process if I utilized an actual course in order to make a product. After a bit more research, I chose Advanced Environment Art for Beginners with Vertex School, which was recommended to me by my live source, John Robertson, and I submitted a money request to the VNS Project Fund, which was approved. While the course was useful, some of the things it advertised turned out to be untrue. It told me that certain software was optional for use. However, once I got into the course and started working through it, they were using Autodesk Maya, which was said to be optional, but was in fact not optional, when every single video in the course involved using Autodesk Maya. Now, I had to figure out a way to get it without having to pay the $250 for just 1 month. And unfortunately, the process of trying to get an educational license didn't work out too well for me, and it was beginning to take too long, and I just didn't have the time anymore. I was down to about 2 weeks to finish my product. So I had to figure out a plan B. Since I had spent a good portion of the beginning of the year learning how to use Unreal Engine, I would put that knowledge to use to design some sort of scene. I began my production with a process very similar to our activity from earlier. Now, I didn't particularly have a genre, time, or geographical setting for this product because, one, my time was very limited, and I didn't have time to completely design the props, materials, or textures from scratch. And two, I only had access to a select list of free assets provided by Unreal Engine in order to create my scene. Within these creative limitations, I knew I wanted to design something with a forest and a lake. So I got some ideas for some sort of cottage next to a lake. I started this process by making my base and setting up my landscape material, which allowed me to change the water levels, the amount of grass, rock, or dirt that showed up. However, certain layers, which allowed me to change the water levels and the amount of grass, rock, or dirt that showed up. How detailed the certain layers were, the saturation or tint of each layer, and so on. However, this part of the process did get quite tricky because some of my settings kept getting messed up, and water was showing up in places I didn't want it to. For example, whenever I wanted to make a flat area of ground, it would just turn into water instead of an area of rocks, dirt, or grass. and it took me about 2 days of work time, so about 8 hours to figure this part out. My next step was to place flora. This part seemed easy at first, but it actually took me about 2 to 3 hours to figure out my placement for this, because it needed to look pretty randomized, but also natural at the same time. You need to think about how nature naturally grows and try to replicate that to make it believable. At first, I had placed some trees down and randomly placed some smaller plants in the surrounding area to make it look a little more natural. But something was still off about this. I needed some random clumps of smaller plants to make things look overgrown, since it's kind of in the middle of the wilderness and it wouldn't be too unkept, but there needed to be some things that looked overgrown, like some huge bushes. You can kind of see multiple areas in this picture where I tried my best to add some overgrown bushes to replicate that idea. I also had a vision in mind to make some sort of dirt path leading up to my cottage. I decided to do this by painting over my landscape material, however I ran into some problems where my painted path wasn't even showing up. I tried messing around with this for about an hour to try and solve this problem, but I wasn't getting anywhere with that, so I decided to scrap that idea. Instead, I worked on sinking and raising the ground levels to make what looked like a path up to the cottage, which I think ended up working out a little bit better. Even though it wasn't perfectly to my liking, I just had to roll with it. Next, I got to work on adding some fencing around the walkway up to the cottage, and adding some lighting as well. The lanterns on the cottage did get moved around quite a few times, about 5 times, because I didn't like the placement, and I wanted it to be more asymmetrical. The lighting along the path isn't perfect at all, and the only lanterns I could find that matched the style I was going for didn't have any built-in light source, so it does look a little weird. But at this point, I told myself it is what it is, and I had to move on, since I also wanted to make sure to put a little attention on the front porch of the cottage. I placed benches on either side and a rocking chair on the left side, and placed the lantern closer to the rocking chair because if a person was going to sit there, they'd likely want the light source closer to them. Once I finished with the outside, I got started on the interior of the cottage. I started placing the furniture first, so I could get an idea of what other props I should have placed and where they should be placed. Placing props wasn't as difficult, but finding the right props was the challenge. I do still think the scene is a little too bare for my liking. I wasn't able to find all the props I was looking for, but I think I certainly did my best with what I had access to. I still had plenty of other great ideas for my scene, but unfortunately I ran out of time and had to be content with what I had finished. As I'm sure you have all sensed, my project process had both challenges and successes. Honestly, the entire thing was a challenge because it took a lot of pushing myself, a lot of self-discipline, and a lot of time out of my personal life, as I was spending up to 4 hours after school doing schoolwork for the first half of the year. And as boring or scary as it sounds, doing 8 or more hours of schoolwork every day for half of the school year actually taught me some really good habits about being ahead with my work and how to balance out time for each of my projects so that I could prioritize senior project when I needed to the most. My biggest success with my project would simply have to be completing everything I had planned. My biggest worry was not finishing everything on time, but I managed it with much help from my advisor, Ms. Kozlowski, to fix up a calendar plan for myself and allow me the time to get things done at home, as Unreal Engine had to be installed on my home computer. This is why some of you may have noticed I haven't been present in school very much the last few weeks. Overall, my favorite part of the process was doing the coding for the minigame and research. My least favorite was most definitely writing the essay. I don't typically enjoy doing a lot of writing, and I oftentimes really struggle to get my message across. In fact, something I didn't mention earlier in this presentation was that in the planning process for my research paper, I actually had no idea what my topic was going to be. And it wasn't until I met with Ms. Kozlowski and she helped me select a topic for my research that I determined what to write my paper on. Originally, my research paper was going to be on using artificial intelligence for design processes, with a focus on doing this ethically. Then it changed to writing about the pros and cons of generative AI, and as I was writing the paper though, I began to lean more into the cons, because the cons were too serious for me to want to speak positively about generative AI, and the pros of generative AI did not balance out the bad. In some ways, the challenges and successes of the year-long project that I've just completed is much like my VNS career. In my first year here, I had no idea what it was I wanted to do. I just knew that it would involve something artsy, because I have always enjoyed making art. But my first project actually had nothing to do with art at all. It was on archery. My second one was on Adobe Illustrator though, and my last 3 projects that year were on learning digital art on Ibis Paint. In my sophomore year, I only did 3 projects, but each of them was extended quite a bit. My first project was poses and anatomy, then I learned about interior design, where I actually shadowed someone doing interior design. And my third project was on photosynthesis. My junior year was definitely my turning point. While it wasn't any of my 6-week projects that aligned with this year's senior project, it was actually my junior project. I personally believe that this is one of the most important projects you will do, aside from your senior project. I highly recommend that you make the most out of this project because it helped me figure out what it was I wanted to do for my senior project topic. I looked into a lot of colleges, but I also made sure to look into possible careers I may want to go into, to make sure I had plenty of options to look at. And I made a list of my personal needs in a career, whether it was the salary I make or the enjoyment and free time I'll get from that career. Personally, I wanted something that would pay well and also something that aligned with my personal interest and gave me at least some free time. And for me, that was video game design and development. I didn't stop there with my research, however. I looked into what it would take to get a job in each career, because I wasn't even sure if college was for me. And I even told myself years before that I had no intentions of attending college. And I know talking to people can be scary, but I also found it very helpful to have conversations with other people who are also in college and people who have already finished college for the career I was interested in, to get an idea of whether or not further education would be best for me. And speaking of the future, I know this question was going to be asked, but I'm choosing to answer this now because I have thought about this question a lot over the course of this school year, and I have too many answers for this question. So I'm going to say it all right now. One of the most helpful things for me was to do a lot of planning. Up until the proposal date, I did non-stop planning for my project. Every bit of preliminary research on my topic I found out, I wrote down on a paper which I titled Planning and Ideas for Senior Project, because I knew it would guide me later on. An important part of this planning phase for me was talking to live sources, which I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation today. Not only was that super helpful, it was incredibly motivating to hear from other people in the industry. It is also very important that you never procrastinate with this project. The time you lose will be very detrimental later on, so it's better to just do it early before it's too late. I also really want to encourage you all to embrace this project and immerse yourself in the research because it can be fun. You just have to make it fun, or if that doesn't work, fake it until you make it. Sometimes you might need a break, and that is perfectly okay. But make sure you're in a good spot with your project and that you can afford to lose out on some of that time. If you absolutely need it, prioritize your mental health first and take that break. My last piece of advice is to do a lot of reflection. I have taken this year to make the most out of my personal learning plan by doing weekly reflections, where I write a paragraph entry for each project I worked on that week. Under a weekly reflections tab in my PLP website, so that way the advisors and I can track my weekly progress and do a lot of goal revision and setting. Not only did this help motivate me a lot, it also forced myself to be held accountable for any sort of procrastination I choose to do. I plan to continue many of my reflection techniques in the coming years in order to guide me in my pursuit of a bachelor's degree in game design and development at the University of Wisconsin-Stout, where I have already been accepted. And I plan to begin taking classes at the start of September. Over those 4 years, I will learn the skills in order to design and develop my own video games, and I hope to share them with the world someday. And I want to thank my mom, all my friends, my boyfriend, my grandma, my advisor, Ms. Kozlowski, and all of my life sources for helping me throughout this project, and also everyone who helped me today, earlier this afternoon, making the salt dough. And everyone for supporting me this year. Thank you. Any questions? Veronica?
What salt recipe did you use to make it stay or not dry?
Can you ask that again? I didn't hear you.
What salt recipe did you use so it wouldn't dry out?
Oh, it was literally, sorry. Veronica asked what salt dough recipe I used. It was just 2 cups of flour, a cup of salt, a cup of water, and just a little bit of oil. Ms. Lukey?
How much is AI streamlining or blowing up the video game industry?
Ms. Lutke asked how much artificial intelligence has streamlined, or in her words, blown up the video game industry. For my research with that, I know a lot of people have been using it to either just make their models for them, but I don't particularly agree with that streamline. I would rather make it myself, and I think that's just an easy way out. And I prefer in actually getting into the creative process. But I know a lot of others just use it for idea building and just to help brainstorm. There's a lot of different ideas, but that's all I know as far as I researched about that. Theo?
Did you enjoy making the interior or like outdoor environment more, and why?
Theo asked if I enjoyed making the exterior or the interior more, and why. There are parts of both that I did and didn't enjoy. I think I enjoyed the interior more, just because it kind of felt like I was decorating my own room, and I like decorating my own room. But I also had a lot of fun like doing the landscape sculpting for the outside base. So yeah. Miss Fornes?
When you were coding, you talked about how you were coding the design. Did you have to learn a coding language, and if so, what language?
Well, I was following a tutorial for that part, so I kind of followed along with what he had me do, and I kind of did a little bit of my own experimentation. But that was as much coding as I did. I didn't want to bridge off too much into coding. Maple?
Do you have a favorite video game?
Maple asked what my favorite video game is. I don't have a favorite. There's just a lot out there that's really good, but I've really enjoyed playing Ghost of Tsushima. I really like open world games though. Like that's typically what I lean more into and what I want to go into. Veronica?
How would we make AI more like eco-friendly?
Veronica asked how we could make AI more eco-friendly. That's a hard one, because it takes a lot of money to do that. Part of my research, I found that Microsoft has actually, I think 5 years ago now, in 2020, they announced that they plan to be carbon negative by 2030. So in order to do that, they need to remove as much carbon as they emit from, like, I think what they were doing, because I looked a little further into it, because they were doing yearly updates. So I looked at those updates, and they have places that are making renewable energy sources to remove the carbon. It's a little hard to explain, but that's as far as I know right now. But it's pretty expensive, and it takes a lot of time to do that as far as carbon emissions. That's as far as I went with my research. Eden?
How would we go about making AI more artist friendly?
How would we go about making AI more artist friendly? Aiden asked. I think it could be different for everyone because everyone has a different opinion on that. For me personally, not using artificial intelligence to make art for you, because that's taking away a lot of jobs, and just pay an artist, like find someone to do it that you can pay, and if you can't, I don't know, I just don't think AI is the best way to go about it because it's taking away a lot of opportunities for people, or there's even growing artists who might even be willing to do it for free just so they can get some sort of commission experience as well. A silhouette?
Did you have to use a separate program to render the environment that you made, or did it just come in the program looking like that?
Silhouette asked if I had to use a separate program to render the environment I made. It was all done on Unreal Engine. I wanted to use more than one, but a lot of them just cost money, and I don't have that money, unfortunately. Tegan?
How did you come up with this activity idea?
Tegan asked how I came up with the activity idea. Well, I met with Miss K, as I typically do, and she helped me brainstorm a lot of ideas for this. And then at one point I was like, oh wait, what if we did some sort of like 3D thing? Because originally it was gonna be something 2D, but since my project is more 3D, I suggested doing some sort of sculpting, and we were like, let's do Salto. So that was how that came about.
There were some people wondering about the time, so I just wanted to let you know the clock in the front is still wrong, like it's been wrong all day, it's a little off. We have just like 4 minutes. So if you real time.
Tegan?
What's your favorite project?
Tegan asked what my favorite project I've ever done was. In my junior year, I did a project on biophilic design. That was probably my favorite one. From what I remember about it, it's been a bit. It's basically integrating nature into the design of architecture and into your design. I had a lot of fun with that one, and I got really immersed in it, and it was really, really interesting. Miss Fornes?
Do you feel like you used aspects of that project in your senior project?
Miss Fornes asked if I think I used aspects of that project in my senior project. I think I've honestly used aspects of all the projects I've done over the year, from my interior design project in sophomore year and that project as well, the biophilia one. I feel like every single one of my projects came together in some sort of way to do this project. Not archery. I'm not sure about that one. Theo?
If you could work at any game studio or on any game in the future, what would you want to work on?
Theo asked if I could work at any game studio in the future or work on any games. That's a hard one. I think it'd be cool working under Naughty Dog. They did The Last of Us. I love The Last of Us. It's a good game. That's the only one that comes to mind that I've been like, that would be super awesome to work there. Games I might want to work on. I don't know for that one. There's a lot. I'll come back to you for that one. Alex?
What game do you think is like a visual masterpiece in terms of like design?
Alex asked what game I think is a visual masterpiece in terms of visuals. That's a very opinion-based one, because everyone has their opinions on like what they prefer for visuals. Some people prefer more realistic ones. I think this is a really hard one. I really enjoy Elden Ring's visuals. They're pretty good. Milo? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What other kind of thought did you put into the plants you're putting into your landscape?
Milo asked what kind of thoughts I put into making the plants for the landscape I made,
Yeah.
and like how to make it look more natural.
Yeah, did you have to make it like uncoating or did it render the entire plant?
No, I didn't have to do that. So what Unreal Engine does is they offer a set of assets, so that's like the props and everything like that. But there's only a selection of like free ones, so I kind of had to look through those and see what options I had and kind of also match it to stay the same style without it looking like things are clashing. I use things like saplings and like younger trees to give it the more bush effect, and I used a collection of various different saplings and flowers to paint a lot of the grass areas. You couldn't really see it in the far back picture I took because the level of detail it had, it doesn't render those very well, so you couldn't see it too well, but closer up in the second image I showed, although it was nighttime, you could kind of see some of that in there.
Thank you, Ash.